Hi everybody. This week we're going to cover Chapter 7 out of the Catering text, which is the event planning. So this is kind of the heart of the text and the heart of what a caterer might do. So first of all, we're going to look at what does a catering client expect. Well, I think first and foremost you think they expect good food, which is kind of the heart of what we do. Also we're going to expect good service. We want just as important as good food is getting it served properly. I mean, food is kind of subjective, but everybody pretty much knows what good service is. They want an event that their guests are going to remember, and more importantly, sometimes they want an event that people are going to talk about for a long time. My wedding, for example, was an okay wedding. I mean, weddings are weddings. Don't tell my wife I said that. But everyone still, after all these years, talks about the wedding cake. And so that's kind of cool. Clients want a problem-free event. Nobody wants to be running around looking for the caterer saying, we've run out of shrimp, or someone's being rude, or you don't have this, you don't have that. So they want to enjoy themselves, typically, and not have to stress out about it. It's bad enough they have to pay for the bill. They want an event that appears to be lavish. Even if they didn't spend a lot of money on it, they still want a wonderful event because even if they didn't have a big budget, it's still important to them. And of course, they also want great weather, which we can't always do something about. I think deeper, though, more underlying, what we used to discuss was the difference between wants and needs. People will come to you and say, well, I want this, I want this, I want this. And a good event planner, a good caterer, has to figure out what that underlying need is. So a lot of times we'll see with a wedding, I want this, I want this. It's not so much about what they want, it's about the need to show off, the need to impress other people. I give you the example of this Sweet 16 party, some of these lavish events you see on TV. That has only one thing, only one thing is important there, and that's to show off, to have the biggest party, to have the biggest bragging rights. So sometimes you need to figure out what people are really after. So we have to look at now the role of the event planner. Now that we know what maybe we have to be doing, what does an event planner do? Well, first of all, you visualize. You have to see the total event from the outset, from the time people go into the parking lot to the time people leave. You have to look at the food situation, the entertainment situation, the seating situation, the parking situation, service, all those things, and you have to see the big picture. How's the room going to be set up? How's the food going to mix with the type of event it is, maybe the type of people that are coming? You have to be a real visionary. Second, you're going to suggest things. You're going to suggest decor. You're going to suggest food. You might suggest alternate sites. You might suggest the entertainment, all those things. You have to be a salesman. And it's no different whether you're waiting tables or you're running a catering operation. You really want to be in control of the situation or of the event. So if you can suggest things that you really want people to do because maybe they make you more money, maybe they're simpler to do, maybe you're just really good at them, being a salesman is very important and suggesting things in a proper way. And that goes along with recommending different things. Once again, you're the professional. When you get into teaching, I always tell new teachers that you know 99.9% more than anybody else in the room. So relax on things. And it's the same thing when you're the catering professional. Everybody's got an opinion, and every client's going to say, well, I heard about this or I saw this, but you've got to be able to recommend with reasons why you think certain things are the best. You may like to work with a certain band, you may like to work with a certain photographer, whatever, just have good reasons. Next, event planner has to accommodate. Because, once again, you're in a service business, and usually in a service business, there's a give and take. If you're trying to get people to give you money to provide a service, you're going to have to try to accommodate any special needs. And that could be dietary issues, it could be time issues, it could be space. You may just not like a person sometimes and not really want to deal with them, but the event's too good to pass up. So accommodating is big. And also then finally staffing, and that's getting the right number of staff, the right type of staff, the right quality of people that can actually do the job. So, bookend, ask tells you to ask 4 questions. Now, I'm not exactly sure that I like the order of these 4 questions, and I like a little bit more detail, but first one is, what's the date of your event? Well, why is that important? Well, obviously you need to know if you're free. Hopefully if you're a good caterer, you're booked year-round. But we need to know what the date of the event is. I immediately go then into what time is your event, because we can have multiple events in a day. My biggest day as a caterer was about 30 different events in one single day. So we were doing things constantly. If they're small events, you can do more than one a day. Maybe if you're doing a party for 2,000, you may only want to take one. But you ask them what time it is. You're also going to ask them about how they hear about us. Now, I think this is a great question because it separates kind of the shoppers from the buyers. So if people have heard about you from a referral, so they have an idea of your price, they have an idea of your food, they have an idea of what you can do, they're going to be a little bit more apt to be a buyer rather than just a shopper. A shopper is someone who heard about you from the Yellow Pages or saw a Facebook thing looking up random caterers. I'm calling about a price. I'm shopping. And so knowing how they heard about you can make a difference in how much work you put into it. Because sometimes if you've got an obvious shopper on the phone and the event doesn't sound that great and you think they're going to go for price, you may not put as much time putting in your proposal. Location for the event. If we're going off-premise, in other words, to some other location than our own, we need to make sure that the proper space is there, the proper equipment, or what equipment is there. Do they have a way to get the truck there? Is it just physically possible for us to do the event off-site? And of course, off-site adds a whole lot more issues than doing it in our own location. If it is our own location, once again, do we have the space to accommodate? Are we free? All those types of things. Next, how many guests are you inviting? We only can do up to 500 people. We can only do up to 1,000. We like to specialize in 3 to 10, whatever. But you got to have a rough idea of what you're dealing with, because that's going to affect staff, type of food, type of storage, type of transportation, all those things. Now, after that, I like to ask I think the most important question, and that's budget. Now, not everyone is comfortable asking about budget, but I think you have to ask that. I think it's crucial, because if you go through all this and someone says, well, my budget is only $3 a person, and you put all this work into it, all this planning, it's an impasse, it's a problem. And I have had people, I did a wedding reception with food, a meal for $4 a person at a country club once. It's just, you do what you have to do sometimes. So I like to get an idea about budget. Now, when I say idea of budget, that doesn't mean tell me exactly what you're going to spend, but I try to get a price range. And the reason I explain to them is I like to make the nicest event for you that we can. And in order to do that, and I don't want to spend a lot of time doing things you're obviously not going to like, if you can give me a price range, somewhere that I can kind of look to get a rough idea, that would help. I'm not going to hold you to that at this point, but I just want kind of a path to follow. And people are typically really nice about that. They know they're going to have to pay for it. I think they assume they're going to have to pay for it anyway. So you might as well get that out of the way. At that point, if you want to go ahead and set up a second consultation, you might want to do it at that point, because there's some other things there that you're going to want. I like to find these things out at the beginning. For example, what's the occasion? I think that what's the occasion is going to give you more about those needs and wants that I mentioned earlier. Because if it's your favorite boss is retiring after 30 years, the person that gave you the start in this business, and they mean the world to you, I think that tells you a lot, rather than, yeah, it's my boss's birthday and we got to do something for him. So one actually has a whole lot of needs attached to it, the other one really doesn't. Lots of other questions you may ask about service style and things like that, formal, informal. I try to get an idea on backup plans if it's an outside event. What if the weather's bad? Do you have a backup plan for inside, or do we need a plan for that? Should we be providing tents as an option? Things like that. If it is an off-site location, one of the first things you need to do is visit that site. So if it's at someone's home, if it is at a different business in town, or they've rented a venue that you're not familiar with, go see it as soon as you can before you give them an answer. Because if you go ahead and tell them, yes, I will take this off-site event at this location, and then you find out 2 days before the event they have no refrigerator, they have no ramp for you to get your truck up, there's no stove, whatever, no elevator, you need to know that. Sometimes that won't matter. You'll take the event anyway. It wasn't that long ago, or a couple of years, that I was doing an event for a man named Tom Scott, who was the CEO of Walmart and the head of Unilever, which does Jiffy peanut butter and Haagen-Dazs and all those other companies. It was a huge event, with people there that were billionaires. And we ended up doing this event, the cooking outside or in a loading dock, standing on about a 4-foot ledge, where 3 of the feet we took up with equipment. So we're literally standing on about a foot ledge, hanging over a loading dock, because that was the only place we could do the kitchen. But it was one of those events where you just didn't want to turn down. So knowing what you've got to work with is important. When the average person books these events, they have no idea what your needs are. They don't realize that refrigeration may be crucial. If it's an evening event, the food's going to be prepared on site. Oh, you needed a stove? I've heard all those things before. So, and I've also carried things up a lot of flight of stairs before, which is no fun. So, now we got a rough idea of what they want, a rough idea of where it is. Now we're going to go into menu design. And menu design is kind of where the fun part is, I think, because being able to tailor a menu specifically for a certain group, I think, is a lot of fun. So you got to take all those things we've talked about here prior into account: type of event, budget issues, where it's at, time of day, all those things come into play. And it's not exactly easy, but there are some tricks to figure out. For example, time of day, quantity of food, style of food. I'll give you a good example. When I was a culinary arts student, we did an event at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. Well, it was a Friday night. There was liquor involved, and we were supposed to be doing mid to heavy appetizers. Well, the chef over the event actually didn't really plug into the fact that it was during dinner time. The event started at 5 in the evening, went 5 to 7, which is prime meal time. There was liquor involved. It was a Friday night. We were slammed. We ran out of food in about the first 25 minutes, and we were supposed to be there 2 hours. We were making hors d'oeuvres out of take a piece of lettuce, throw some dip on it, put it on a tray. It was horrible. I think we ended up sneaking out the back door, and I don't know what repercussions came from that. But it was one of those things, because we didn't really plan the menu, or students didn't plan the menu at all. But the menu wasn't planned for the event and all the different factors that went into it. That's why finding out the time is real important. And we just recently had an event that we did at the school, where it was a lunchtime event. It basically started at 11, but the food was going to start about 11:30, 11:45. That lunchtime frame with free food, do we really expect the 200 people that they were calling for, or do we plan for 250? We easily hit 250. It was one of the crazier events I've done as far as just nonstop people. But you got to look, they got to eat lunch somewhere. If they can go and get it for free, you might as well. You've got to listen to your client on their wants, but you've got to really be able to work with that and come up with your own suggestions, because the client, just like not knowing you need a stove or a refrigerator or why you don't like to climb stairs, it's not going to have any idea on really what you can produce in the kitchen. They may say, I want fried chicken. Well, we're doing this out in the middle of a field for a retirement party. I don't really have electricity. We could set up turkey fryers. There's a way around these things to do fried chicken. But you've got to be able to understand and once again accommodate different things. You got to try to make something for everybody on the menu. Think about your different age ranges. Male, female makes a difference in what people like. Special dietary needs. I always try to have a vegetarian option on hand. You can't accommodate everybody, no matter how much we talk about it and how much we try, especially if you don't get notice. I do ask when I'm doing lunches and when I'm doing dinners, one of those questions I ask somewhere in the process is, do you know of any special dietary restrictions or needs? Working in the northwest part of Arkansas, we had a large number of people that worked for Walmart that were Pakistani and Indian backgrounds, and they liked a lot of vegetarian food. So where the regular Walmart groups would like a lot of barbecue, we did a lot of brisket, we always had to have a certain number of vegetarian options available. And so that's good to know. I hate it when someone comes in and says, I can't eat anything here. They go back and they say, oh, we had this terrible catered event, I couldn't eat anything. Well, they don't explain that they're gluten intolerant and they didn't say anything about it. They just say, well, I couldn't eat anything, so away we go. Menu pricing. Now, this is one of those things we actually had a discussion question on menu pricing. One of those things, everybody's got their own system. Some people are pretty cut and dry. We take our food prices, we divide it by whatever our food cost percent is going to be, and that is what's going to be our menu price. Other people are going to look at all the different factors. We've talked about these in the past. My staffing level, my transportation cost, all these different things that go into it. If you look around, some caterers have set menu prices. You can look online and you can look up caterers and you can see caterers that have their menu online and their pricing. I hate putting my pricing online because it tells my competitors exactly what I'm charging. If there are people that are out there looking more for price and not necessarily service, it means that they probably aren't going to go with me because I'm not going to be the cheapest. And you may be okay with that. But if you're just starting out and you need more business, maybe you want to be able to negotiate price. So I don't put my pricing online. The other problem with putting your pricing out there is it doesn't explain the services that go along with it. Joe's Catering does shrimp cocktail for $10 a person, but your shrimp cocktail is $15 a person, and that's all it says. Well, why? Why are you so much more expensive? Well, we're using a really nice 12 to 15 shrimp, in other words 12 to 15 per pound. We serve it in a boat that's been hand carved out of ice. The other guy, he takes some frozen shrimp from Walmart and throws it in a plastic bowl with some cocktail sauce. So price does not exactly explain quality, and so that's my whole issue on prices. I think what you have to do is you have to work with your client. Once again, when you look at budget, when you get an idea from them what they want to pay, then you go back and you design your catering menu to fit that budget, and that way the client's going to be a little bit more at ease and happy, more chance you're going to sell it the way you want to sell it. But menu pricing can be really one of those things. Budgeting, just like the event people, the people holding the event have a budget, you should have a budget too. You're going to have fixed costs. You know what it costs to provide a server. You know what it costs to maybe rent you the equipment you're going to need. You know what it costs for gasoline and a driver to take your event over. So you're going to have to budget your costs just as well. This is a business. You're here to make money on it. So you've got to figure all those things out. Now, from a client standpoint, say you come back with a menu and it exceeds the client's budget. Well, you know what you've got to do there is you've got to figure out a way to work with it. You may say, well, instead of doing filet, we may go ahead and do a ribeye instead. Make changes, make accommodations. Rather than having an all-you-can-eat carving station where people will come up and carve their own prime rib, why don't we put a server back there and dish that out? Now, you still have to add in the cost for the server, but rather than let people just come in and take giant hunks of really expensive meat off, everybody's going to be happier. Plus, you sell it, as a value-added service. It would be so much more elegant of an event if we would have a server out there doing this. Recent event that I'm working on is the people come in all at once. It's a big dinner, 275 people or so, small location. All the guests come in at one time. They mill around for a half an hour or so before they sit down, another half an hour before they eat. But the client would like everything on the table, salad, desserts, all these things, which means we have to start about an hour and a half early before people are going to eat the food and put all this food out. Not many salads want to sit out for that long. So what I've suggested to the client is that they hold a reception in a room or a little building right next door. We'll provide past hors d'oeuvres, making it a much higher level event. Butler past hors d'oeuvres, people like that. But it also keeps people out of our way so we can actually get our job done. So budget-wise, canapes, little open-face sandwiches cost next to nothing. And so it doesn't hurt my budget, it's not going to hurt their budget, and it's going to make the event a lot more. So once again, when it comes to these budgets, you know what kind of money you need to make. You've got to figure out how to work with people, because ultimately if you don't make them happy, you're not going to get the business and you're going to go under. Everything that you do with a customer should be written down in a proposal. All right. I've got one that I've written up that is a proposal. It's also an acceptance. It's also an invoice. So I've got basically one piece of paper there. But to prevent any issues, you've got to put everything that you're going to do, everything you're going to provide, anything you might expect. Say the client says, well, I'll go ahead and I will get everything moved out of this area and I will have my family set up tables and chairs. And you arrive and tables and chairs aren't set up. Now you're going to have to do it. Well, who pays for that? If that is written out in the proposal and also written into a contract, there's a lot less problem. And I think that proposal is just as much to protect the caterer, because if during the event the caterer comes up and says, hey, you said that we'd have lobster tails on ice for everybody here, and I see shrimp. Well, no. Copy the proposal here and the contract. It says we will be providing shrimp cocktail for people. So anytime you have something in writing, it's much better for you. Down payments. Now we've got everything booked. Everything's planned out. And this is one of those parts that, to be quite honest, I hate to do. The down payment. But it's really crucial. Some companies will ask for 25%. Some will ask for 50%. You have to get some of that money up front because you have cost up front, right? Say, for example, you're doing an event for 500 people and you're going to be charging them $20 a person for a little reception thing. All right, that's quite a bit of money, right? You go out and you buy all the food, you buy all the liquor, you buy all whatever you're going to do, and the client calls you the day of and says, oh, there's been a death in the family, we've got to cancel. I don't know when we'll reschedule. Well, if you've taken a down payment, that's going to protect you. That's going to cover your cost. If you did not get a down payment, what do? So the reason that I hate a down payment, sometimes people are like, I don't want to pay you until I see something. Well, what if we cancel? When can we get our down payment back? Under what situations can we never get our down payment back? You got to write a whole lot of, cover a whole lot of bases with that. If someone gives you a down payment 6 months in advance, and then 4 months in advance they say we have to cancel, do you give them that down payment back? Do you give them a percentage? Once again, knowing that word of mouth is everything in our business, sometimes it's best to try to give people money back when you can. Also, when you get that down payment, you're going to want to have a contract signed. Not necessarily smart to write your own contract. Get something from a legal source that's going to be actually binding, because sometimes things do go strange and you want to protect your business and you want to make sure that people are not going to come back and with any legal issues on you. So always do that, and always keep those records for as long as you can, because you never know when someone's going to come back. So subcontracting things, there might be a situation where you have to subcontract or bring other people in. In other words, you can't do all the business yourself. You've got to bring in help. We see this a lot of times with servers, all right? And I've been many events where we did not have enough people to do the service. So there are several temporary agencies out there. Some specialize in the hospitality business, and some are just regular tent businesses that will keep a pool of servers on hand. And I've used these businesses before. I've had contracts with different companies that, whenever I needed someone, I'd call and say, I need 8 servers this week. Usually we have a preset price that I'm going to pay these people. That way I can budget for it, which I'm going to pass along to the client. The nice thing about using a service is I can go ahead and plan and know the type of person I'm going to have. There's nothing worse than hoping that you're going to have some qualified people show up to work. They come in, they're disheveled, they're not dressed properly, they don't have the right attitude. Where if you work with the same people over and over, they know what you expect, that they're going to be able to do the job. Another tricky issue is guaranteeing the number of guests. Why do we guarantee the number of guests? Well, that's once again to protect both sides. If someone says, I'm going to have 500 people, and the day the event shows up and they've got 100 people, what do you do? Now, I've been in some tough situations here, and that very situation where they guaranteed, say, 250, and because of some other events that happened, 25 showed up. I had this actually happen for a charitable group once, that very situation. And I'll be honest with you, they'd signed a contract, I bought the food, I gave them the food, and I charged them the full price for 250 people, only though a handful showed up. It was just one of those bad things. But once again, it's a business. So I always try to get a rough estimate when I do the initial consultation, and then I will give them a date and say, all right, this is the guaranteed date. In other words, when this date hits, and it might be 3 days before an event, it might be a week before the event, but somewhere close, this is the number of people I'm going to bill you for, unless the count goes up. Now, if the count goes up, you can give me up to a 24-hour notice, and we will bill accordingly. But this is our minimum charge based on this guarantee. Well, what if people don't show up? Well, since we are a business and we're planning with food and service for this, this is what we're expecting to do, and this is what we expect to get paid for. Like I said, I've had people that have had issues before. I've had a group where a lot more people showed up that didn't tell me. It's always smart when you do caterings to have ways to count your customers. The easiest way is to count plates. Know that you're putting out 250 plates exactly. Then at the end, go back and count how many plates are left over. Yeah, some people may have gone through twice, but usually you can catch that. But if they have a whole lot more show up than you planned, you need to be able to have some way to bill for that and to explain it. Also, I'll send out my server at the very beginning and say, count number of seats. Give me a rough idea how many people are there, and know how to work that. One of my biggest concerns is not necessarily to get paid for it, is I want to make sure I'm going to have enough food, which I don't want to round out of. So when you're doing these guarantees, I will usually make extra food. I'll usually, if it's a normal size group, I'll make 10% over. So if it's 250 people, I will usually make between 5 and 10%, up to 25 more portions. Now, I build that into my cost, all right? I'm not going to just, lose that money. I build that into my cost, and I pass that right along to the client. And that way, and say, I guarantee we're not going to run out of food if a few more people show up. Next is executing the event. All right, the big day's here, the event's here. Let's make the best event we can. The biggest thing here is, remember, once again, it's a service business. How may I help you? What can I do to make this the most special day ever? Because typically, with caterings, it's all about that special day. We usually don't cater, the bad days. So what can you do to set yourself apart? How can you be of service to someone? How can you show them that you care, that they're having a great event? Those are the things you have to figure out. Being at the client's beck and call which is not always fun. I'll tell you, it's one of the reasons I don't cater weddings anymore. Weddings are usually the worst things because usually everyone's nervous. The bride is fighting with mom or dad. There's always some type of issue going on in the audience, and you've got to remember your job is to keep everybody happy and to keep this event moving forward, because otherwise it's going to look bad on you. But service is everything. There's some really good forms in your book, by the way. There's some event planning sheets. They're kind of long, but I think they're a great tool to use. You might want to just come up with some of your own forms. I'm going to put some of the forms that I've used online so you get an idea on how those work. Now, at the end of the event, obviously we have to get the balance of money due, and that could be, that's always a tricky situation. Well, it doesn't have to be always a tricky situation. When people sign the contract, you could make a notation in the contract that final payment is due prior to the event. Final payment is due once the event started, once it's afterwards, whatever. You never really want to let people get away without paying you. So if you say, well, I'll invoice you after the event, that's a long time to go sometimes. I know a lot of the schools I've worked for, they like to invoice. And then we end up with the account receivable problem, because once we've done an event, we bill somebody a month later, they forget about it. Paying is not always, the first thing on their mind. The other issue we deal with when collecting people's money for these events is, what if there's been a problem at the event? What if we did run out of food? What if, one of our servers was rude? What if we spilled a whole tray of something? Somebody doesn't want to necessarily pay us, or so they don't want to pay us the amount we'd quoted. And those are issues you're going to have to figure out how to deal with. If you have an ironclad contract, you could push the issue, but that can create bad will, and that makes people unhappy. So you might find ways that you can work with people to rectify those situations. Once you've been paid, then you do your follow-up. Always important. Call your guest afterwards, make sure they're okay. You might send them a little survey. You might send them a thank you gift. You might send them your referral form that, we really were happy to be your caterer. We enjoyed the event. We hope you did too. We hope your guests had a wonderful time. Remember that we do have a referral program, and if you are good enough to refer our services to another event, we will treat you to one of our special Christmas cookie and candy baskets that we do every year. They're so popular. So anyway, try to build that word of mouth referral among your clients, because that's going to help you build your business quicker than anything. So that is the event in a nutshell. Basically finding out what a client wants, what they need, finding a way to fill it, coming up with the food and the service aspects, making sure you have all the legal issues taken care of, write everything down, plan everything out on paper, holding the event, getting your money, and then following up to make sure that you'll do their events again, and they'll send your card to other people. And on that, business cards. Always a good idea to take business cards to a catered event. What you don't want to do is during the wedding be passing your business card out to different people who are sitting there. Even at the reception, it's kind of tacky unless people ask you. Now, if people say, oh, you're the caterer, we love this, we'd love to talk to you about an event, then it's fine. But you don't want to be out there shelling yourself, basically at somebody else's expense. I actually had a situation once where one of my employees was passing out their own business cards for a service that they were doing during an event, and when I caught them, they had to stop that. So use common sense and use some tact with that. That's Chapter 7 on event planning. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.